Hi, I'm Gary.
Hello, I'm Leon the grandfather.
And we are Gary and
The grandfather. Now it's 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready. Now go, go, go. You don't you step on my blue suede shoes. You know, Gary, nice introduction, I thought. Rather shocking. I was thinking.
Shocking, yes.
I was thinking, I'm making fun, of course, but I'm thinking to myself, the art of conversation, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Like, you're a great conversationalist, right? Really, you're really good. You can keep a conversation going,
No,
Yeah.
no.
Oh, no, it's true.
No,
it's true.
no.
Well, okay. Then you tell me why. No, seriously. Why not? You're good at conversation.
You think so?
Yeah, because what is the art of conversation? The art of conversation is, I think, has two basic premises to it, right? The first one, of course, is that you have to have something to say, right? You have to have, so you should be somewhat well-read. You should know what's going on in the world. Like, in small talk, for instance, I teach some classes on small talk, and the first thing I say is that download an app, BBC, NBC, CNN, doesn't matter. Download the current information in the world. Somebody asks you a question and you go, really? I never heard of that before, right? Don't be an idiot, right? That's one. But then most importantly, you have to learn to listen, right? To close up. So you got to be informed, and at times you have to be silent, right? And then, of course, you can espouse what you want. But, what do you think?
Well, I think the second point, I think you are correct on that. The idea of listening. That all of the people in my circle who are great conversationalists, that they first and foremost are great listeners. For sure. And those are the type of people where even if they don't have any idea about the subject which I'm trying to engage them with in conversation, they will still be able to ask an intelligent question. And I think for these type of people, I have an aunt, for example, who's this way. And you could talk to her about anything. She will listen. She can respond. I think another trait with these types of people is they have a natural curiosity. So they're not only just listening to what you have to say, but this curiosity, this innate curiosity, allows them to ask an appropriate response, leading to further to further the conversation. Yeah.
Well, I guess today, with the advent of the internet, I mean, it's obvious there are going to be things that you know nothing about, for sure. I mean, you have to assume that you're ignorant in certain areas, and yet that potentially could be a part of the conversation. So yeah, I think that truly sometimes it's important to state, I don't know anything about this subject, but please tell me more, and then people will, frame it for you. They'll give you some parameters, right? But I think you have to be, what I draw the line at, the only thing that I ever stop at is I'm really not interested in vulgarity, sexuality, violence, and things along the. I'm not interested in people that have very strong views that, that seem nonsensical. Basically, I'm willing to always listen, and I think most people are. But the minute you start to say, "I hate this," "I disagree with that," or you think, "Gee, the world's too big now. It's too big." You have to be open within reason. I mean, there's certain moral issues I would draw the line. For sure.
Well, for me, for some of those situations, I would be more than happy to listen and discuss with somebody. Not really discuss, but listen to what they have to say on the matter. Somebody involved in something along those lines. I'd be curious. I'd be interested. Just to hear their viewpoint. Whether I agree with it or not is totally different. But the people that I struggle to engage with would be the people who, again, like you said, they have such a strong viewpoint on something. Example, politics,
Yeah.
where there's some people
Yeah.
on either end
Yeah.
where before you say anything to them in response, they're going to just attack you.
Yeah.
You're wrong. You're a
fool.
hypocrite. You're a fool.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and those are the people where I find it
Yeah.
difficult to engage.
Yeah.
But if it's just something that I don't personally agree with, such as if I were talking to a like a drug addict or a prostitute or something, well, I think I could engage in this type of conversation.
For sure.
Might be very interesting
Yeah.
because I think everybody can learn from other people and their experiences. You know, it can all be taken away as a learning experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, and many times people offer you a different perspective. I mean, you've certainly had that with
For
travel.
sure.
You have a certain belief in a country or certain ideas, and you get there, and it's totally different. It's not what you expected, right? It's better or it's worse, but it's certainly different. An example for me, you know, Gary, was when I went to India, you know, and I went to this yoga conference, and I kind of really didn't want to kind of go. I was a little bit nervous, right? And I thought, because I heard so many things about India and violence and chaos and, you know, sickness and what have you. I was there a month, I think, 3 weeks, and I had a wonderful time. Wonderful. Didn't get sick. Just the kindness people. But certain things, you have to be firm. You have to be strong. You can't be weak in India. You know, and you will get just 1.5 billion people. I mean, they'll walk over you. So you got to be strong, but nice. So that was a big eye opener for me, in that sense. And I think we've all experienced that in different ways, right? You have certain ideas that are false or uninformed, or perhaps they were given to you by family and friends that are untrue. You know, right?
Well, as an aside, because this isn't really about conversation, but it goes along with what you were saying, that I think for a lot of Americans, at least back when I was growing up, if we went to Europe, we'd always get some sort of secret money pouch to put under your shirt or your on your waist to hide your passport, your money, and all your traveler's checks, if you guys even remember what they are. And it was to deter pickpockets.
Right.
Was the reason. Thieves and pickpockets. And it made it almost feel like if you went to Europe and walked down the street, you were going to get mugged or robbed or something.
Yeah.
And then when I was around 18 or 19, I worked at a bookstore in a visitor center for a town I was living. And I didn't realize it until I started working there, but this town, it wasn't even just famous in the country, but people around the world were going to visit this town.
Wow.
And they'd come into the shop.
Wow.
But the thing which really blew my mind as an 18, 19-year-old was that a lot of these foreign nationals who were coming in, they had their money stashed away in the pouches under their shirt or around their waist, hidden under their clothes, doing the same thing. And I asked somebody about it one time, and they said, "Oh, because the pickpockets, you don't know." And I'm thinking, this is really small town America, a really safe area. Nobody's going to rob you here. But for them, they had the same perspective as I had, only in reverse. And it was a really big eye-opener for me.
Yeah. Funny story. In San Francisco, and it was, like, I'm old, right? So in San Francisco, we used to, when I was growing up, when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, it was very popular to have scented candles. You could buy the candles and you'd light them and you'd have this aromatic sort of air in your home or in your apartment or whatever. And then also people just had candles as well, and they would kind of highlight or punctuate the evening. You turn the lights low, candles. So
Yeah.
I think I don't think I wasn't even married yet. I was in this shop in San Francisco, and I'm buying these candles in this candle store. And the girl asked me, "Where are you from, sir?" And I said, "Oh, I'm from Vancouver." "Washington?" I said, "No, Vancouver, Canada." And I'm buying the candles, and she said, looks at me, "Oh, don't worry." And I said, "Don't worry?" She said, "Yeah, well, the way America's growing and expanding, soon you'll have electricity as well." True story. True story. Yeah. You know, because the Americans, and I spoke to more than one, they assumed that there was an ice wall at the border. I mean, there was an ice wall of, 10 or 20 feet, and you had to carve through it, I mean, it's almost like, "Do you have a lot of dogs at home?" "Oh, I got the dogs. In fact, at night when we got to go to the 7-Eleven, we got to take the dogs. Got to take our dog sled, Really? Oh, it's a long way to go.
Well, don't you do that then? I thought all Canadians did.
Yeah. Oh, all these ideas about Canada. So funny. And, to be fair, if you travel in northern Canada, it's all true. It is so cold. We did a photo shoot once in this little town in the middle of British Columbia. And I do magazine business, right? And I took the editor with us, and I said to him, "Do you have your thermal underwear, like your underwear, your undergarment, that was designed for cold?" He said to me, "Please, real men don't wear thermal underwear." I said, "Okay, fine." Minus 59.
Oh.
Minus 59. And he had to go up in a helicopter and do a shoot of the lake. They took him up in the helicopter, and there's this lake, Williston Lake, and they did this shoot, frozen lake. And he got out, and he said to me, "That was very cold," and he never, ever commented again on thermal underwear. Probably almost froze to death, the poor man,
Well,
Yeah.
he said it himself.
Wow.
Real men don't wear thermal underwear.
Gary, true story. You've seen this Discovery Channel programs. They're walking in north, and at the time I had a beard, I had a beard.
Mm-hmm.
And they're walking in the north, and the beer freezes. You go, nonsense. That's impossible. I walked from here, maybe 200-300 feet. My beard froze. Right? It froze because of perspiration. Not quite froze, but it was getting the ice. Like literally, like no kidding. They plug the trucks in at night. They plug them in so you won't break the block. Right? You ever seen that? They have actually little stands about this tall, and they actually have a plug in. And so you take the plug from your engine and you plug it in to keep the engine warm at night. Otherwise you could crack the block.
Oh, really?
It gets that cold. And in the morning, went to a 7-Eleven, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'm a little bit like you. I'm from a country that they steal things, right? I'm in outside this, I go into this 7-Eleven, and I notice that all the trucks, the Ford trucks, mostly Ford trucks outside, are running. And there's nobody sitting in them. And I'm from the city, and I'm thinking to myself, my God, those trucks would be gone.
Yeah.
So I went into the 7-Eleven, and I said, it's full of people, and I said, all those trucks outside are running, and all the heads go like this. Look at me. And the kid looked at me and he said, "Have you ever stolen a man's horse?" Right? Get it. Like, really get it. Like, these were rough guys. Like, yeah, the minute you leave Vancouver, the border of Canada, you're into a different world. Rough, like you're, like Alaska. I think, in a sense, you imagine Alaska, it's like that. Call of the Wild, Jack London is right there. Really, it's cold and primitive in my humble estimation. But there are but people like it. I mean, if you like the outdoors, and you like mosquitoes.
Well, I think those types of places in the world with those harsh conditions. I think you have to be rough,
Yeah.
to survive. I mean, if they weren't,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
how would they even survive?
Yeah. The last just a total aside here. The last survivor on the Titanic, and it is an article I read today on the BBC, was the chief baker. Okay, the chief baker on the Titanic. The Titanic's going down in what, 2 hours, just over 2 hours, right? He was asleep because it's middle of the night. Wakes up, goes into the into the bakery and orders the bakers to bake bread for the boats, right? So they bake all this bread, and the ship is of course sinking in the process, right? And he's a man, so he's not getting off, right? So he goes down to his room, he drinks 2 bottles of whiskey, he gets onto the highest pinnacle of the mast. We all seen the film, right? You know, and the boat sinks, and he's in the water for 2 hours. He's got a piece of floating chair, deck chair, whatever. He finds a boat. He can't get into the boat. It's overcrowded. He gets into another boat. It's half empty. He gets into it. He lives.
Really?
He survived until he was 78 years old.
Wow.
Supposedly the last survivor of the Titanic. Why? Well, of course, we would assume it's the alcohol, right? But the alcohol could actually kill you because it's actually, it's a depressant, so it actually can slow your heart rate. It can actually not help you in the cold. But what they think happened actually is when you hit the water, you have that so-called cold shock.
Yeah.
And then and then you ingest water, and then you drown. So because of the alcohol, he didn't get the cold shock, and that allowed him. They think that allowed him to have his body, because apparently I assume that your core, your organs, your heart, your kidneys, your liver. I assume that they very quickly became dysfunctional. So not true. Apparently not true. Because you have all that fat, or maybe it was a bit fat, but yeah. So eventually, all the alcohol did, they think, is calm him enough that he was able to tread his way and paddle and swim, and 2 hours later, right? And maybe it dulled his perception as well,
Yeah, probably.
It would dull me. It would dull me, but it wasn't. But the alcohol didn't save him. It was because it calmed himself, so to speak. Interesting, eh? Well,
it's really interesting, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the Titanic took 2.5 hours to sink, right? And people were very honorable, and it was mostly women and children that were saved. The Lusitania, which was sunk in 1916, it took 40 minutes to sink, and the majority of people that survived were men. It's an interesting study. So here you got 2.5 hours, let's say, and mostly women and children. Men were very gallant and and decent and moral and all that. But over here you had 40 minutes and mostly men. They pushed the women out of the way, and they took the boats, and etc., etc. Why? And the article went on to say that the psychologist pointed out that if you have time to die, as a man, in this case, if you have time to die, you can rationalize my life, and it's been a good life, and I've done some things. I'm sorry, my Lord. Please forgive me, and all these things, because you have time. But if you don't have time, your fight or flight instinct takes over, right? And you want to survive, which that most of them didn't survive anyhow. But there's the same number that survived 1,500, or rather the same number died. 1,500, same number survived, 1,200 roughly. But they were both different populations, if you will. The one was mostly women and children. The other was mostly men. Do you know that the head of the Star Line? I think his name is Ishmael, and he survived. He got on one of the boats. The head guy. He survived.
I think I remember hearing that.
Yeah, he survived, and he got total social opprobrium.
Yeah.
Of course. You survive, and 1,500 people die. How do you rationalize that one? Well,
exactly.
and he claimed that there already were women and children that were all gone, which of course is nonsense. It's not true. He panicked, right?
He claimed.
And his grandchildren for the rest of his life thought that he was a walking corpse. He never forgave himself, and nor should he. You know, nor should he, because he was the one who ordered the speed. You see, he was the man who ordered the captain to pick up the speed. Him, right? Him, the owner of the Star Line, their company, right? So funny how history goes, eh? Victoria Cross. There's only been about 12 or 1300 awarded. It's the top medal for bravery in the British Empire, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I was reading this article the other day. Somebody paid £800,000 for this medal.
800,000.
£1,000, so around $1 million for this medal, and several other ones, right? And I was reading this and going just sickened that this man has sold his Victoria Cross. But in reality, what happened is he gave it to a trust, and the trust sold it.
Oh.
And the grandson of his brother actually bought it, and presented it to the British Museum at the end. So it went from money to the trust, and then his grandson bought it and gave it to the British Museum. So it's kind of a nice story.
Well, did it say how the man had earned it?
It did actually. He earned it for bravery during World War I. He was a submarine commander, and the submarine was torpedoed, and it began to sink, and it was a bit of a ploy, because as it was sinking, the U-boat came close, and they had enough weapons still left, and they sunk the U-boat before they sunk. Right, so he was actually, I guess he took command or control, right? But what I was going to say before is that there's around 1,200 Victoria Crosses awarded. And most of those have been awarded posthumously after the guy's dead. And most of those were not rewarded for bravery.
Oh,
right?
really?
They weren't brave. They just did the right thing at the right time. I mean, the Red Badge of Courage, basically. I mean, look at that book. I mean, initially you run away, and then you gain your wits, and you come back, and you become a brave man, right?
Yeah.
You know? So I mean,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So they did the right thing. They weren't brave at all in that sense. They just, and Gary. I mean, isn't that the wish of every man, that you're able to do the right thing at the right time?
Well, that's that's something that's a pet peeve of mine. Is you always see on these news articles where somebody, man, woman, whoever, police officer, I don't know, that they don't do the right thing.
Yeah.
And they do something that's objectively we'd say it's being cowardly.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And then everyone, the armchair critics, they'll say, well, if I were in that position, I would have done this or I would have done that.
Yeah.
But I think it's really, you can't really make such a call if you're not in that situation. That you really don't know
Absolutely
how you would act and your body would act in that
absolutely
moment.
No, you hope you would do the right thing.
You hope for sure,
but no, I agree with you. You can't be sure.
Yeah.
But you think to yourself, especially as you get older, older chronologically, you have more experience. And I'll tell you a story. I'm not particularly a brave guy. Came back to the office one night. There was a lady in our area used to collect paper and bags and what have you, right? I came back to the office late one night, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's the old woman there, and she's got a bicycle frame on top of her little cart. How she got this bicycle frame, God knows. And there's an enormous man. He's screaming at her, just screaming, and he's very confrontational. And I thought, oh no, he's going to hit her. And I found myself walking towards the scene, going, I don't want to lose my teeth, and I don't want to have a broken nose. But I was being propelled because you couldn't have allowed that woman to be brutalized by this man. You'd have had to have done something. Had to. You know? And I think, and I'm not a brave person, I wouldn't consider myself brave, but you gotta do the right thing at the right time, right? And in that case, you were afforded enough time to think to yourself, right? Which is critical, like the Lusitania and the Titanic example, right? If you got a little time, people will always do the right thing, you know. But you know, Gary, all of this conversation, to me, and we've spoken about this at length, this comes back to critical thinking skills, right? Now, with the violence and the war that has again cropped up in the world, right? Or maybe it's never settled down, but it's certainly more omnipresent right now in Europe, as we know, right? Like, you ask yourself, have we lost our mind? You know, but very quickly we want to blame them, and we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. You know, this kind of creating the villain, if you can put it. And this is just ridiculous. Ridiculous. Do we want peace? I don't think so. I don't think we want peace at all on both sides. You know, really, we want to have conflict because conflict is good for business, ultimately. The industrial military complex. I don't think that's far-fetched any longer, right? So, coming back to conversation, I really think if we as human beings develop the art of conversation, it's going to put an end to war. Because I'm going to talk to you. Because you know yourself, I'd far rather kiss you than hit you, right? Because when I hit you, I can't control the agenda, right? I can't, ever. But if I just talk to you, you know, I can at least control the agenda through my words. You may disagree, you may get angry, but I can control the agenda. But the minute you cross that line into some form of violence,
that's it. Yeah.
You lost the agenda, unfortunately. Yeah. So, you see, you are good at conversation, you see? Right? You know? Right? No, but I really hope so. I really hope so, Guy, you know? It's time that we come to some level of real, you know, real love and peace. And, you know, love is the only thing that we all understand as human beings, right? When I say I love you, you understand. I love you as my wife. I love you as my girlfriend. I love you as my friend. I love you as my mom, my dad. We all understand love. I say I hate you. How do you hate me? You don't like the way I look. You don't like what I've said. You don't like the way I smell. You don't like the color of my skin. There's a reason I hate you, but I don't know, right? Because hate is unique, but love is universal. I really believe this, you know? I really do. Yeah.
Well, yeah. You know, out of conversation, and you just took the words right out of my mouth.
I could do my little dance. La 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 la.
What were we saying about hate again? What were we saying about hate?
I hate your dancing. I hate your dancing.
Enough.
Enough. So, you take care.
Okay. Gary out.
The grandfather out. God bless. Bye bye.
Bye bye.